They moved in for a week, called me a freeloader in my own kitchen, and started planning to sell my house while I was at work, so I filed the papers, set the traps, and changed the locks while they stood on the porch holding their luggage and their pride, begging the old man to save them from what they'd done. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Walter. I turned 60 the week my daughter asked if she and her husband could crash for a little while. I am a grandfather to a 7-year-old girl who thinks my workshop is a magical forest because of the way the light comes through the rafters in the late afternoon. I am not a saint, and I am not foolish. But like every stupid heart that has ever beaten in a father's chest, I know what it is to want your child to be safe, even when she no longer deserves it. I worked nights then, handling electrical maintenance at the hospital. Wiring, emergency power, the kind of hands-on job nobody notices until lights flicker and machines start complaining. The day shift calls me sparks. The night shift calls me when anything dies. On weekends I build birdhouses for the church fundraiser and fix whatever my neighbors quietly break. When Hannah called, it was raining. I remember because the rain was tapping the copper gutters I had finally finished polishing after my wife died, and the sound used to soothe me. Her voice shook like she had not slept. "Dad, our building's going through renovations, and they've decided to terminate early. It is just for a week. Trent has a job starting Monday. We just need a landing pad." A week. I looked at the empty chair across my kitchen table. The one that had belonged to Elaine and now belonged to no one. I looked at the magnet poems my granddaughter, Lily, made on my fridge last Sunday. I looked at the ceiling I had skin-coated when the house felt too loud with memories. Of course, I said yes. They arrived with boxes and opinions. Trent is the kind of man who shakes your hand like he is digging for treasure in your joints. He is 32, always between opportunities, and somehow always in charge of every conversation. They put their things in my guest room and their attitude in every room that was not theirs. Night 1, he looked around my kitchen and smiled like a consultant who had been brought in to save a failing company. "We can rip those cabinets and install open shelving. Rustic. Airy. Hannah wants light." Hannah nodded, eyes on her phone, a reflex she had learned in the years since her mother's funeral. When she looked up, for a flicker, I saw the little girl who used to braid my hair while I watched the ballgame on mute. Then the glance was gone, folded back into adulthood. "Temporary," I said, smiling. "A week." "Right," Trent said. "A week." I am not sure when the week ended and something else began. Their things expanded. A ring light bloomed in my living room like a fluorescent flower. Boxes of supplements showed up on my porch for a brand partnership Trent was sure would change everything. He took his calls on speaker and laughed at the word clock-in. They started hosting friends on Friday nights. Hannah reclaimed the word "you" from the dictionary and used it like a broom. "You left the pan on the stove again," she said one morning, pointing at the skillet I had washed and set to dry. "You cannot just leave stuff." "I dried it," I said, already knowing the argument was not about the pan. "Details, Walt," Trent said, dropping into my chair and cracking a seltzer like it owed him money. "We need to be a team if this is going to work." A team. I went to work that night and replaced a ballast in a neonatal wing, holding my breath while a tiny chest rose and fell under a web of wires. I came home to a mountain of dishes, 3 damp towels on my bathroom floor, and a sticky note on my coffee maker that said "decaf for the old man," with a heart drawn in a way that felt like a smile with teeth. Lily started sleeping over on Saturdays. Her father lives 2 hours away, a good man who married too fast after Hannah left and makes the best of a complicated map. She would fall asleep on the couch with my sweater as a blanket, and I would move her to the guest room after they went out, past the light ring and the empty cans. "Grandpa," she whispered one night, her breath warm on my neck, "can we make the birdhouse with the heart window tomorrow?" Her hair smelled like strawberries. I said yes. Of course. Day 24 of a 7-day stay, Trent called me "our tenant," in a joke to his friend. The friend laughed. Hannah laughed. I looked at the dining room table I built in '96 out of a single slab of ash and wondered whether laughter can rot wood. They started calling me Walt more than Dad. I do not mind my name. It is honest. But there was a way it came out of their mouths that turned it into an insult. He is old. He is soft. He is ours. On day 39, I got home from a double shift to discover that my garage had become a content studio. Trent's cousin, a man with a beard you could lose a pencil in, was recording a podcast about hustle, surrounded by my drill press, my table saw, and the workbench I built with my father. They had pushed my tools to the sides like furniture against a wall at a party you were not invited to. "You cannot run a business out of my garage," I said. Calmly. Too calmly. "It is content," Trent said, adjusting a camera. "Not business. Also, Hannah and I had a talk and we think you should consider moving your truck to the street. It looks old. My truck is a 1989 F-150. It is old. It is also a soldier, and it has seen every December since my wife was 30. I walked outside and patted its hood. The sky was low and white. I could smell snow in a month that does not usually allow it. I am not an angry man. But sometimes anger is not a fire. It is a frost. It creeps into corners and stiffens joints and makes simple motions deliberate. On day 43, they hosted a dinner party for friends from Trent's network. Men and women in clothes that looked like ads and smiles that looked like handshakes filled my dining room, complimenting the vintage aesthetic like it was a theme I had chosen to amuse them. When the plates were empty, Trent raised a glass and said, "To building something new, right here, young energy in an old space." They all clinked. I did not. "Grandpa built something here a long time ago," Lily whispered to the woman beside her. The woman smiled at Lily and then back at Trent. On day 51, Trent called me a freeloader. That is the day that matters. It was Saturday morning. I had just returned from the hospital, sun in my eyes, coffee in my hand, bacon in the pan. He walked in gym shorts and a smirk and said, as if he were checking the weather, "You do realize you are coasting on paid-off mortgage energy and our contribution is vibe, right? It balances." I set the spatula down carefully. The bacon hissed. The word freeloader sat on the table like something forgotten, like a knife after a meal, waiting to cut the next hand that reached without looking. I did not argue. I cooked the bacon, scrambled eggs, put toast on their plates. I kissed my granddaughter's hair and sent her with Hannah to the park. I walked into my workshop, closed the door, pulled a legal pad from a drawer, and wrote in block letters at the top of a clean page. No more weak. I make plans for a living. I make light where there is none and safety where none existed. I have filed for permits, pulled wire, installed systems, and set up redundancies in buildings with lives more valuable than mine. I know that when you fix a thing, you do not start with the symptom. You trace the problem to the source. I know that a good plan does not shout. It hums. Step 1, formalize their temporary. I went to the office supply store and bought a simple lease template, month to month, $1 rent, 30 days notice, clear rules about guests, quiet hours, use of space. Most importantly, a clause that any harassment or verbal abuse toward the owner terminates the agreement immediately and results in the occupants being considered licensees at will with no expectation of tenancy rights. Legal friends at work helped me tidy the language. I printed 3 copies and set them on the dining room table under a pen. "This is so we are all clear," I said that evening. "It is not about money." Trent rolled his eyes. "Paperwork guy. Okay, sure. It is basically symbolic." "Symbolic," I said, smiling, because sometimes the truth wears costumes. They signed. Hannah did too, hesitating for a breath that told me a part of her, small but alive, remembered the old rules of our house: write it down, mean it. Step 2, protect the house. Monday morning, on my way home from work, I stopped by a lawyer's office, a woman named Ortega whom I knew through a neighbor. We talked for 90 minutes. When she leaned back in her chair at the end, she looked at me the way a good mechanic looks at a car after it has told its story. "You want to keep living here, and you want the house to wind up safe," she said. "Not for them. For Lily." "Yes." "You want peace now and no war later." "Yes." "We will put the house in an irrevocable trust," she said. "You keep a life estate. You are the sole trustee. Beneficiary is Lily. When you are gone, it slides to her whether anyone likes it or not. As long as you are alive, you make the rules in your home. No one can borrow against it. No one can sell it. No one can promise it on your behalf. Sound good?" "It sounds like light coming back on," I said. We filed the paperwork. It hummed under everything from that day forward. Step 3, turn their behavior into evidence. I installed 2 small cameras in common areas, the kitchen and the living room. Not secret. I posted a note on the fridge: cameras installed for security and liability. They laughed. People laugh at smoke detectors too, right up until the day they do not. I saved every message. Every sticky note they left. Every sarcastic "Walt" tossed like a beer cap into a corner. I kept a ledger. Time in the hospital. Time cleaning. Time repairing cabinet doors broken by their friends. Receipts for groceries. Receipts for toilet paper. Receipts for the locks I had to rehang after Trent's cousin tried to force open the back door, because the knob sticks. Step 4, remind them the bill exists. 2 weeks later, I stopped doing what I had been doing without accounting for it. I cooked for myself and Lily. I did my laundry. I tidied my spaces. I let theirs become a mirror of their choices. The sink filled. The smell in the kitchen sharpened from living to neglect. Dishes formed a landscape and then an ecosystem. I let it grow. "Walt," Trent said one night, gesturing at the mess like he had discovered it for the first time, "this is not working." "I agree," I said. "You are in material breach of 3 clauses. Guests past midnight without permission. Use of garage for commercial purposes. Harassment." "Harassment," he laughed. "Do not be dramatic." I did not argue. I typed a 3-day notice to cure or quit, citing the exact paragraphs and the exact dates and times of violations. I handed it to them at dinner like a napkin. Hannah's hand shook as she held the paper. "We are family," she whispered after Trent stormed out. And there it was, the thing that weakens every spine. Family. The begging word. I looked at my daughter. So act like it. Step 5. Let the world do some of the work I am tired of doing. The next morning I reported the garage podcast studio to the city's code enforcement. Not because I wanted to be petty, but because I refused to let some man with a beard run wires across the floor where my granddaughter walks. They came. They saw the extension cords, the crowd, the microphones, the sponsors stacked in pyramids. They issued a warning. Then a fine. Trent complained on social media that old small minds hate new big ideas, which is a sentence that sounds better when you do not owe $750 for violating safety codes. Step 6. Kindness where it matters. I picked up Lily from school early on a Wednesday and took her for ice cream. We went to the shop with the mural that looks like waves. She ate her cone and told me about the turtle she drew in art. Then she looked up and said, very plainly, I do not like living with Mommy and Trent. Why? I asked, as gently as a man can ask a child to open a wound. They fight over money and they fight over noise and they fight over the music in the car. My mom cries in the bathroom and says not to tell. I get scared at night. I took a long breath and put my old hand over her small one. You will not be scared here, I said. This is your house in a way nobody knows yet. She looked at me like I had given her a secret password. Then she finished her ice cream and asked if we could feed the ducks at the pond. We did. Sometimes you do not need to solve a life. You just need to feed ducks. Step 7. The meeting. On day 79, I sent a group text, family dinner. Sunday. No guests. No excuses. They arrived like contestants on a show, 10 minutes late, dressed like they thought I was going to apologize. I had made roast chicken and potatoes, the meal Elaine used to call real food. The table was set. The cameras were on. The papers were in a folder by my plate. We need to talk about how this is going, I began, careful, steady. And how it ends. Trent leaned back like someone offered him a chair with a story. Here we go. I have a life estate in this house, and it is in a trust for Lily, I said. I am the trustee. That means the house is not an asset for you to consider in your plans. It is not collateral. It is not anything but a home. Not yours. Not mine to give. Ours to respect while we are allowed to be in it. Hannah stared at me as if I were suddenly speaking a language she had forgotten she knew. Trent blinked as if the words had turned the room brighter and he needed a moment to adjust. You cannot, he started. I can, I said, sliding the filed deed across the table. And I did. Last week. He picked up the paper. He read. His mouth moved but made no sound. I also documented every violation of our agreement, I continued, placing the ledger and a 3-day notice on the table. If you cure them now, I will consider resetting. If you do not, I will file an unlawful detainer on Tuesday morning. Unlawful detainer, he scoffed, recovering fast. You learned a big word on the internet. I learned it from the clerk at the courthouse, I said. Hannah's eyes filled. Dad. I offered shelter, I said, softer. You offered me contempt. You want me to be family while you treat me like an obstacle. I am done being the thing you trip over. Trent stood up and knocked his chair into the wall so hard a hairline crack ran through the paint I had rolled myself last spring. You cannot kick us out. Where would we even go? You should have asked that before you made a business in my garage, I said, and then, because a part of me needed a clean confession from him that he would never give, I tapped the small remote in my pocket that switches the living room camera from a silent red dot to a recording notification on the television. Footage from the kitchen began to play. Clips. Not all of it. Just enough to remind the room that the house was not crazy. We were witnesses. Decoff for the old man, Hannah's sticky note flashed. Freeloader, Trent's mouth formed the word, clear as noon. Our tenant, he chuckled into his phone. The laugh. The word, sell. The phrase, while he is at work. The room went very quiet when the image of Lily crossed the frame. Her voice is small and brave. My grandpa built something here a long time ago. I paused the recording. This is not a fight you can charm, I said finally. It is math and law and decency. Trent left. Hannah stayed, sobbing silently into her napkin, a little girl again for a minute. I made tea. She took it with both hands like a blessing. I do not know how we got here, she said. I do, I said. We forgot everything we promised your mother at her grave. But we can remember now if we choose. She looked at the folder again. At Lily's name on the beneficiary line. At the fact that I had not cut her out of love, just out of the incorrect assumption that love and inheritance were the same thing. We will fix this, she said, and I heard both of us wondering whether she meant we as a family or we as in she and her husband. Time would answer that. Time always does. Step 8, the court. They did not cure. Of course they did not cure. The kitchen became a war zone of schedules and quiet hours ignored. The garage restaged itself the way a stage returns to a play when nobody cancels the show. On Tuesday morning, I filed. On Thursday, a hearing date. On the next Friday, they painted themselves as victims in front of a judge who had seen 50 of them that week and did not like any one of them. I handed the judge the lease. I handed him the notice. I handed him the screenshots. He asked a few questions. He looked at me over his glasses the way men look at other men who they recognize from a different era when you could tell what someone did by the things on their hands. Judgment for the plaintiff, he said. Sheriff to supervise the lockout if needed. 7 days. Trent blinked, his mouth remembering how to make words only after his brain had finished mourning the ones it thought it deserved. He stood in the hallway after and told me I was a small man with a small heart. He told me social media would hate me. He told me nobody does this to family. You did, I said. Step 9, the lock. 7 days later, on a blue morning that smelled like cut grass and clean decisions, the sheriff walked with me to my front door. It was not dramatic. Drama is for people who believe they are interesting because they are loud. The deputy read his thing. I handed over a set of keys. The locksmith worked quietly. When the bolt turned, the house seemed to take a breath. The way a dog does when the person it loves comes home from a long shift and drops the bag and reaches for fur. Hannah stood on the porch beside Trent, both of them holding luggage and pride, neither of them heavy enough to crush a lifetime of work. She looked at the deputy the way a person looks at a map that forgot to draw the street they need. Dad, she said. One word. A sail without wind. I am not a cruel man. I am not interested in revenge as a sport. But I will not pretend I did not enjoy the symmetry of moments. He had called me a freeloader. He had called me our tenant. He had laughed about selling my house while I was at work. Temporary, I said, tapping the porch rail the way I do when I am nervous. Right? That is what you said. Trent started to speak. The deputy cleared his throat. Some truths want respect. They left. Not with a grand exit. Just with the quiet shuffle of two people who finally understood they were not main characters in a story someone else wrote. After. Hannah called 2 days later from a motel. Without him. She said she needed a few days before she brought Lily. She said she had called a counselor. She said the word sorry the way you say a blessing you finally learned the meaning of. I said nothing that would make it harder. I said come home for dinner on Sunday. When they arrived, I had set 3 plates. Lily ran into my arms so fast she lost a shoe. Hannah lingered at the threshold, looking at the light across the floorboards like she was afraid the house would withdraw it. I left him, she said in a voice that was hers and Elaine's layered together. He threw the eviction papers on the floor and called you names and said things about Lily, and I realized I would rather stack clean towels at a motel for the next decade than listen to him talk about my father like that for one more minute. We ate in the strange gladness of endings that turn out to be beginnings in disguise. After dinner, I brought out the folder and showed Hannah the line where Lily's name stood under the word beneficiary. She traced the letters with one finger. She started to cry and then to laugh and then to cry again. I thought you hated me, she said. I hated the person you were being, I answered. I loved the one who put band-aids on her doll and sobbed when I crushed a spider even though you hate spiders. I loved the person who told me to drink water when your mother was sick because I kept forgetting. I loved the person who said I was the best at grilled cheese even though I burn it every time. Hannah laughed then, really laughed, head back, the laugh of a woman who is not going to explain herself to a man who never learned to listen. I made a new set of house rules that night. Not a lease. Not legal. Just guidelines written on the whiteboard Lily uses for drawing hearts. Pick up what you drop. Speak kindly. Ask before inviting people over. If you use it, clean it. If you break it, tell the truth. If you are tired, rest. If you are scared, say it out loud. Whoever makes coffee has to leave a cup for Grandpa. We started again. As for Trent, he sent me 3 long messages, then a shorter one, then a picture of a middle finger because men who cannot win with logic like to draw cartoons. He made a video about toxic elders that got 15 likes and 1 comment from a man named Cal who sells knives from the trunk of his car. He tried to come back one afternoon and pound on the door, but the deputy who had given me his card drove by in a plain sedan at the right moment and suggested he leave. He did. I fixed the wall where the chair had hit it. I restored the garage to itself. I scrubbed the grease from the cabinet edge where a hand had left its print on the day of the fight. I put my tools back in the places they know. I hung a little sign above the workbench that says Lily's Workshop in shaky marker. It looks good there. I did not tell many people what happened. Pride is a poor historian. But I did laugh, sometimes, when I thought about the last morning on the porch. Not because throwing people out is funny. Because there is a particular hilarity in the way arrogance evaporates when confronted with consequences. It is the laugh you have when a magic trick is finally explained. Oh. That is all it was. Smoke and mirrors and a man insisting he could sell the house of a man who built it with his hands. One day, a week after Hannah and Lily moved back in for real, temporarily, the only way that word should ever be used in a home, we spent the afternoon cleaning the gutters. Lily sat on the porch in a toolbox, passing me imaginary wrenches. Hannah folded the laundry in the living room with the window open, a breeze nosing through. For a minute, just a minute, It felt like a day I remembered from 100 years ago when Elaine was in the kitchen and the radio was playing and everything we owned we had paid for with the kind of money you make with tired bodies, and nobody in the world could make us feel ashamed for it. At dinner that night, I put my palm on the table and waited until the quiet felt like a friend. "We will say grace," I said, though I am not religious in the way people who say they are religious are religious. I bowed my head anyway. For food, for roofs, for forgiveness, for second tries. For the wonderful, stubborn miracle of a lock that keeps things out and another kind of lock that keeps things in. "Amen," Hannah said. "Amen," said Lily, then added, "and for the heart window on the birdhouse." We all laughed. After Lily was asleep, Hannah and I sat on the porch. The sky was soft. The world, for once, did not feel like it had teeth. She looked over at me, hesitant. "Do you ever regret all of it?" she asked. "Which part?" I said. "The part where you loved people who did not deserve it." I thought about that for a while. "Loving someone does not make you a fool," I said. "Staying a fool when they show you who they are, that is where regret lives." "But I am not a fool anymore." She nodded. "I am learning." "We all are," I said. "Every day." The next morning, I took the eviction papers and the old lease and the receipts and the ledger and put them in a folder in my filing cabinet, behind the instructions for the sump pump and the warranty for the water heater and the letter Elaine wrote me on our 25th anniversary that says, in her very specific handwriting, "Grow old, stubborn and kind." I labeled the tab, "House, Lessons." It seemed right. When the rain comes now and taps those polished gutters, I stand in the doorway and listen to it like music. Sometimes, on nights when the hospital is quiet and the machines do not complain, I close my eyes in the break room and see the porch on the morning of the lockout and hear my own voice saying the thing that mattered most in the end. Temporary, right? And then I laugh. Not cruelly. Just honestly. A small, grateful laugh fit for an old man who fixed the lights in his own house and who finally turned them on.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.